Hey there and welcome. My name is Tina, and I help people align with who they really are. I want to say a big thank you for being here. For those of you who watch, subscribe, and especially comment, it is greatly appreciated. I've recently received some great comments, and one subscriber asked about doing a reading on Annette Funicello. She was the most popular Mouseketeer on one of the first children's shows on television. She also sang and performed in movies. I was drawn to her relationship with Walt Disney because she indicated to me that he was part of her soul family. He was the one who discovered her at a dance recital while she was performing and brought her in for an audition at the age of 12. She was the final Mouseketeer that was picked. She was number 24 out of approximately 10,000 children. After the show ran for 4 years, she was the only one kept under contract. I'm going to not just bring in Annette's chart, but we are also going to look at Walt's chart as well to show you their relationship by the numbers. So please stay tuned. If you are new to my channel, please understand that these videos are not meant to put the famous on a pedestal or to condemn them in any way. This is an opportunity to look at them as spiritual beings having a human experience, as we all are. Showcasing their soul contracts gives them the opportunity to come through and mentor us from the other side. If you would like to know more about the history of the soul contract and how I put the charts together, please watch my short introductory video that I will put a link to in the description box below. I connect with those that cross over energetically, but so can you. We are all given talents and qualities that make this a possibility to connect with people who have crossed over, either through creative writing, meditation, or honing our psychic abilities. Our loved ones who have crossed over are always ready to connect. They love to send you signs to tell you that they are still supporting you from the other side. You just have to be open to receiving the messages. Now, I'm going to bring up Annette's chart and Walt's as well. And then at the end of the session, we're going to pull some oracle cards to see if we can get some more messages from Annette. So here, let me go ahead and share my screen. If you can just bear with me a moment so we can pull up the charts. So here's the most beautiful Annette Funicello. Like I was saying earlier, when I gave you just a little bit of a recap about who she was, unfortunately, she was a little bit before my time, but in the area that I grew up with, we only were able, as far as television goes, to get one station. So I never saw the Mouseketeer Club or any of that type of programming, but I do remember her in Babes in Toyland. That is my recollection of her. I know as a child, as a girl, I really loved that movie. Looking back, it's a little bit painful because of the culture we were in at that time. It was a little bit misogynistic. And I'm not condemning that. Again, it was a time period that we all went through, but I just loved her beautiful femininity in the movie and her dresses and her approach. She was definitely beloved by many. And so we're going to go through her chart here and see just why that is. And then I did pull in this kind of very cute picture of her with Walt. Also, before I get too far into this, let me annotate my mouse so we can see it where I'm pointing to. And again, as I love this picture of Annette, kind of in that, you think of Disney and the magic behind, they showcase Tinkerbell and there's always this magic fairy dust. And so I thought this was a very fitting picture because Annette really became his, not that he had favorites, but she was the most popular. Again, we're going to get into the chart. She was pulling in something like 6,000 fan letters a day. I mean, this was a big deal. This was real pioneering stuff going on here. Let's talk about what this meant for Annette as a soul coming into this incarnation. And again, this is her chart on the left, which is the charts are based on our birth certificate name. We call that the cake of our life, as the birth certificate name plays throughout our lives. Now, we may take on other names. Most of us don't use our middle name, so she would have gone by Annette Funicello. I do think her mother called her Annie. I didn't bring in those vibrations because I think we have enough to talk about here. So we call that the current name. And so any other name, I know she was married several times. If she would have taken her husband's name, as sometimes women do, that also brings in some additional vibrations. And those just act like an icing on the cake. The real guts of our life really comes from our birth certificate name. So that's where we're going to focus, and which is why I put that over here on the left side. And then I have, again, her birth certificate name over here, her current name, and we were bringing in Walt's birth certificate name and his current name. And like I said, the reason I did that is because when we incarnate, we usually incarnate with a soul family, whether that might be your parents, your brothers and sisters. And these are all people designed to help you on your journey. Now, soul family is not always your blood family. Other people coming in, we're going to have a pivotal role in their life and vice versa. And for Annette, Walt was one of those people. He was part of her soul family. So I always like to start out by pointing out the two triangles in this Star of David here. We have the triangle here. There's two of them, but one that points to the earth, that's our physical triangle. And then we have our spiritual triangle, which points to the heavens. I always talk about the physical chart primarily first because we have three aspects in each side of our chart. Our challenges, we can call that karma. We are given things that are going to come to challenge us. It's not a punishment. It's something we chose. So it's going to bring in some energies of those numbers that can be construed as being very negative, but it's meant for us to overcome it and to come into the positive side. And so then we're given these qualities or talents that we choose, which acts as a fulcrum between our karma or challenges and our drives. The talents try to bridge the gap between what we're really trying to accomplish and help us to work on overcoming our challenges. And so we have that on the spiritual side of the chart as well, the challenges, qualities, and drives. And then when we add up all the numbers, we come up to our overall idea of what we really came here to learn. So Annette had a life purpose for this incarnation, and so we'll get into that as well. So as you can see, I always like to start here with the physical challenged part. And so she had this blended number of the 16-7. So what does that mean? So this for Annette would have meant that she would be learning to develop certain characteristics like reliability, to become very determined and ambitious, but be very versatile and adaptable as well. This would also be about her learning that she needed to show who she really was at a soul level and still be able to fit into society. So this would really push her as far as opening up and coming out of hiding, because the 16 is really about being your authentic self, being true to who you are. And the 7s are all about opening the heart and showing who you are at a very deep level and connecting with people through the heart. So what does all that mean for her? As a child, her mother said she was very shy and she wanted her to come out of hiding. So she entered her into some dance classes to get her to be more socially aware and be able to interact with other people. Because like I said, this number can try to hide who they are. Now, her mother would categorize her as shy, But really, this number is more about being an introvert. So they don't really express themselves emotionally on the outside. They are very much internalized. So you have these extroverted egos and these introverted egos. And she was very much an introverted ego. Her mom did a wonderful job by pulling her into dance classes, which helps to get her out into society, get her into a class, and to help her start to develop these social skills. Now, Annette hit it on the head. I watched some of the interviews that they had, and she had talked about how she was very introverted, and she actually looked at Walt Disney as being more shy. And when I look at he's got this 21-3 in his challenges in both his current name and his birth certificate name. And when people have a 3 in their karma or their challenges, it manifests as being very shy. So Walt would have been very, very shy as a child. And so the shyness here is not so much, he wasn't really an introvert. The shyness is tied to worthiness and wanting to hide yourself from others because you have this deep-seated fear of not being worthy to be seen and heard. And it's something that he would have taken on as a child. This number indicates a lot of hardship and having to learn how to, the 3 is categorized by this kind of labyrinth canal, learning how to come out of the canal and express yourself. So it's just a little bit of a different energy between these 2 numbers. And I just kind of wanted to point that out because it does manifest a little bit differently for people depending on how your charts are set up. So Annette was also meant to draw people together in unity. And so when we see a 7 here, which is tied to the heart, it's about drawing people to you. And it creates this link, you see this chain link here. So the more people that are attracted, the bigger the link creates and the more powerful the energy is. And that's actually gets to be more significant when we get to her spiritual drives here. As you see, there's a 7 here. She is to come into more of the positive qualities of the number. The 16s are very hidden. They're not big risk taker, but her mother helped her in that aspect. And that's another thing a person of our soul family can help us to bring out our more positive qualities. And of course, Walt was that person for her as well, being that he was the one who discovered her. And so this energy, this 21-3 is tied to the Divine Mother and coming into his nurturing. And he was very nurturing to Annette, and she was very respectful of him. And she spoke very highly of him because of that. Now, there are other things about Walt where he could be not so nurturing, but when it came to Annette, she would draw that out in him. And it's because they share a lot of the same numbers, especially the 7, which is tied to the heart. And so that bonds them together. Not to mention their life purpose. They have some similarities going on there, and we'll discuss that in a little bit. But again, we want to start with this 16-7. She comes out as really trying to fit in, right? Trying to be this ideal child, this moralistic, what people wanted her to be. And that's very much part of this 16-7 challenges, is that you are going to be put in society in this role where you're going to have to always be deciding about what is really best for you or what is best for this persona that people want. What is really great about this number for her and really added to her as an actress was this ability to be very relatable. The 16-7, they can relate to people at all different vibrations. Now, Annette did not so much come into her authenticity. She did in some ways, but that was something she wanted to convey to me, that these patterns are really hard to break out. None of this stuff is easy. And it's so challenging. And I'm not grading anybody on how they did on their charts. If anybody can work through some of these numbers, and once they cross over, any of us cross over to the other side, we get to see everything from all of the perspectives through our life review. So this will make sense, even if you don't really get an opportunity to work through all these numbers. There's no punishment for that. You're just choosing these vibrations to have these experiences to, again, help you in your ascension process and to gain understanding. I mean, we want to come here. This is fun for us. We love the challenge. It is not about just coming here, laying on the beach and drinking Mai Tais. That is not why we came here, even though people think that's sometimes those material things and having things easy is what we came here for. She has this 11-2 in her current name, which adds some more energy along this aspect of her physical challenge. And so what that did for her was 11-2s are tied to structure. So it helped her to manifest structure to help her in building that reliability and to give her this emotional resiliency to adjust to the demands of being a child actor. This was no cakewalk. The Mouseketeers worked 6 days a week, full days. They had to be available whenever Disney wanted them to, whether it was for promotional pieces, advertising, charity work. And so this would be very much a challenge for Annette because, again, she was expected to behave and act a certain way, which took away a little bit from her being her authentic self. So none of this was easy, and I'm not condemning that. Probably the best thing that they did with these child actors is a parent was supposed to be with them at all time. So they were not on the set alone. They were not left unsupervised. Walt has these, he's a very dominant 9 here. And 9 is the most powerful number. And people with 9s have to be very careful because they're meant to come into their power, but they need to do it with integrity. It's about power with integrity and not disempowering people, not bulldozing them over, because 9s can be very destructive. There is a lot of integrity to what Walt Disney was doing. Not always. Like I said, we are all humans and we all make mistakes. And that was part of his learning lessons. But again, I feel that having that parent, that supervisor there was really smart on his end for the integrity part. And that 11-2 would help her to build structure. You can't look at what someone else did because there really wasn't any other child actors to really look at. So again, this was all being developed on the fly and out of their imagination. So part of the authenticity piece was Walt wanted her to be a singer. And he was actually trying to push her into mimicking another teen singer. I can't remember her name, but it was her record producer that allowed Annette to kind of stick with what she wanted to do with her voice. What they ended up doing was, because her voice was not very strong, she hadn't developed that power yet, because for Annette it is all about building some power there. She actually double tracked her vocals on top of each other, and that kind of gave her a much fuller sound. So they were able to authentically kind of stay with who Annette voice was, rather than Annette trying to use her voice to copy somebody. So that's an idea of where you would be challenged with this number in your authenticity. So that 11-2, now you see she had that 11-2 in her current name, and then she's got that in her physical qualities, which is like I was saying, a beautiful number for her to have. This is all about Venus energy. It made Annette really of high intelligence and very beautiful, because of course Venus is tied to beauty and to the eyes. And I think back to Frankie Avalon's song Venus. So I don't know that Frankie wrote that song, but there is some connection there with Venus and with Annette having 2 11-2s in her chart. Very highly Venus oriented beauty. She's very beautiful. And so that was part of her talents and her qualities. And this number would also, besides the fact that the 11-2 is about building something, your body of work throughout your life, whether that's a business or writing or singing, dancing, this number is also about transformation. It's called the life to death number. And so that's transformation. Everything has cycles. You know, a movie has a cycle, a beginning and an end. And so this is about Annette learning that lesson about cycles. She would be somebody who would get very attached to people and situations. And when after 4 years, the Mouseketeers ended because it was so very new and they were struggling on where they wanted to go with it. But she was the only one that they kept under contract. Walt, like I said, this was a big connection with her and Walt to play out these parts in this lifetime together for both of their growths. So this number would help her to open up her heart because, again, the 16, that 7 here is about her learning how to receive all that love. I mean, she was just astounded when Walt told her how many fan letters she was getting and how much people loved her. She didn't really believe it. And so then she's got this beautiful talent of Venus love energy, which helps her to makes her this very nurturing, loving person, and it draws more people to her, where the 7s can be very magnetic, the 11-2s can accentuate that as well. So that 11-2 would also help her to reveal that shadow or hidden self, especially if it was no longer serving her. One of the biggest transformations that this number helped her with was when she decided to get divorced. It was something that was very frowned upon. It was against her religious beliefs, her family beliefs, and society wasn't still really on board with that. So this number was helping her to break out of some old patterning that society puts upon us and makes us want to belong, not rock the boat, because she really struggled with that throughout her life. She really was able to realize that staying in this unhappy marriage was not helping her husband or her children. This is about birthing new levels of awareness and being willing to let go of what no longer serves us. So now the negative side of this 11-2 that we want to talk about is the fact that it can bring on a level of codependency. And I talk about this in Elvis's chart, in Whitney Houston's chart, that because it lacks structure, we tend to cling on to other people we view as being more powerful. Now, we're already seeing that Walt is a dominant 9. That's more powerful than Annette's chart being a dominant 8. 9s and 1s are the most powerful number energies. When you have an 11-2, you come here without a lot of structure because it's meant for you to think outside of the box and to create your own structure. You tend to cling to your family or your parents or your authoritative figures because you're looking for direction, because it's very scary to develop your own path. This 5 that she had in her current name would really help her in that respect, as far as these are very pioneering energies. It can give somebody a lot of courage. So this helped with her courage and her will to help her to try to break out of some of the codependency issues that she was having, because I remember her in an interview mentioning that she didn't even know how to write a check until after she got divorced. The family is kind of running everything and she's just allowing people to direct her. And that's not why we come here, is to be dependent on others. It's for us to get our own independence. And so 5s are all about freedom, being independent and inventive. So this number would help her with that. But you have to also watch this number. It's really tied to truth. So you have to be careful about, it's very important to speak your truth, because if you're not speaking your truth, that can be very zapping on your energy, because that's really important for 5s. And it's about speech and singing. So this was very good for her to be singing and to open up that throat chakra So again, everything is here to help us. There are negative sides of the fives. They can suffer from psychic attacks, and it can be you can get very mentally negative. And so you have to be very careful about that and do a lot of clearing your energy and other people's energy as well with that number in your chart. Not as much as if it's in your birth chart, but it's still a very psychic number. So you just have to be very aware of that. And so we talked about her mother had to go to work with her. Mother was this driving force behind her. The family became very enmeshed, that her father had to learn how to take care of her brothers and take on a more feminine role, which he did, helping to take care of the brothers while the mom could focus going to work with Annette. And so they became really enmeshed as family, and that can have good and bad, and Annette, she didn't come through as having any hostilities or anything negative about that. She just wants people to be aware of when you're looking at these things from the outside and how it seems like a very fairy tale life. We've heard the horror stories of other celebrities whose parents took full advantage of their children and abused them, because again, there's this sense of pushing all this responsibility on the child and making the child, in essence, take care of everyone. And you have to be very careful with somebody with the dominant eights, because they can become very martyred. They can take on this very martyred beingness and just take care of everyone else and neglect themselves. So I think we can see in her life where you tend to manifest things based on these ideas and beliefs that we take on. She just wanted to come through and say it's a dangerous, slippery slope if you are managing your child, or if your child becomes the breadwinner of the family. People need to be very conscious of their actions and their behaviors in regards to that, because of how easy it is to abuse the child in that instance. So when we talked about Walt's nines and her having this very codependent relationship with him in some ways, because she always asked for his advice, she always did what he wanted, and he could have definitely abused that role more than probably one of the things he did, I would say, to disempower her was he never put her in a starring role. Even though as popular as she was, he never did that, whether that was a chauvinistic type subconscious program playing for him. As popular as she was, she could have carried a movie herself, but she was always put second to Frankie Avalon or to other actors. He's got this 10-1 in spiritual challenges, which is a really tough karma. This is about using your power properly, being careful about not abusing others, doing things with very high integrity, because it's a service soul number. It's about serving others. If you serve yourself more than others, this can really come back to bite you. That's what we call karma, cause and effect. If you have a service soul number, karma actually comes back a little bit harder on you, because you're really meant to be that service soul. That ties in with these ones here in Annette's chart. So she would have to be very careful about being disempowered and letting anybody have too much say, that it's really important for you to be choosing your own path. So she has these beautiful 6/6s in her physical drives. That's our goals, what gets us out of bed in the morning. This made her very practical. This is Taurus energy, and it's a very practical, grounded energy. And she was such a very practical person. She never had this drama about her. She was really the most positive person. That also comes from her fives as well. Fives have that little bit of people pleasing, and then you add that codependency of the 11-2s. And this is about pleasing everybody. And so you just have to be careful. But she was always so positive, and positive is a good thing. But again, when you have 6/6s in your drives, it's all about learning to become focused and creative, And this isn't 100% free will when you have six sixes in this aspect. Her soul came here to push her to do certain things. This gave her more relatability. This is where the 6,000 letters a day, this is her connecting and being so relatable to others. And so that coupled with this 11-2 and her talents really would help her in building a business. Sixes are great in business. And she did come back to her authenticity more when she came out with her teddy bear line. That was really more true to her heart. She always really loved teddy bears. The bear symbolizes protective. I think of her as a mother bear, this protective, nurturing, caring, very powerful being, even though they look soft and cuddly, but they do have this very powerful side to them, and you don't mess with the mother bears. I would think she was very protective of her children, acknowledging the power that we all have inside of us. And so I found that very interesting that she had that teddy bear line, and she did do a fragrance line. That's all about her coming from her fives and that psychic ability and the clairvoyance and sensing the future. And eights are also being very futuristic, and we talk about smelling the future, right? Smelling what's coming next. And so I think I can understand, again, she had this fragrance line. And so that was part of who she really was. She was starting to come and start to do a few things that she wanted to do. So that was her creativity manifesting itself through her authentic self. So that 19-1 in her current name here, it's really tied to clown energies. So this is where it was meant for her to learn about laughing at herself, not taking things too seriously. 11 2s and 8s can get and 5s, they can get very serious and forget to see the more fun, which isn't in her name. I think that was part of what she came here to learn, was to have more fun and to let go and to laugh. And I think you could see that as she evolved, because when she did go back to doing movies with Frankie, it was a comedy musical, right? They were making fun of those original movies, and it didn't do tremendously great, but they did at least make their money back on the movie. Again, part of her learning about laughing and enjoying life and having fun. And that's what that 19-1 does. You have to be careful, because the negative side of that 19-1, and you can see this in Annette in a lot of aspects, and that is you allow society to dictate your actions. And for me, I really got that feeling that even applied to who she married. I never felt that she really married the love of her life. And even when she comes through, because we'll talk a little bit about love relationships here when we get to her spiritual side. But again, we make it fit in our heads. And I am guilty of this as much as anybody. It looks good on paper. You have maybe similar religious beliefs, and you're both okay financially. So you're a little balanced there. But do you really connect at a deep, deep level? Can you both be yourselves and support each other through your growth and encourage each other to go after what it is that you came here to learn? So again, that's a whole different energy. And we get tripped up a little bit by this make-believe stories, fairy tales, and that gets a little distorted. So that 19-1, being careful about not letting society dictate your actions, because it's all about you learning that you have all this power and how to manifest what you want and bring it down in physical form. And because you can kind of see this box here where you're bringing down these energies and you're making something actually appear in the physical plane. And that's what these sixes are about as well. So that was a great compliment to the six energy. Sixes are all about converting something from nothing, taking your ideas and making them happen. So she would have been very artistic, much in the visual arts. She had that Venus energy, so she was beautiful anyways, but that's why she dressed with such style and class, and the colors she chose were just really always beautiful on her. That's all part of that artistic spectrum that she's got going on here. So I think we can see she did become very creative, very good in business. And if I had to say anything negative, little bit codependent, looking to others to lead her, not fully coming into her power, but it's a very difficult time for women. So on Annette's the spiritual side of the chart, we see that she is a dominant 8. And so when we see this in challenges and in her qualities, that's usually a pretty good set. That person will overcome the negative qualities because you've got both the numbers there to balance off of each other. Being a dominant 8 makes her what we call a high frequency soul. And so somebody who is very much kind of flu. They're very fluffy and love being in the ethers and out there. So it's really hard for them to ground, especially when you have one in challenges here. It's a great grounding energy, but again, it can be very difficult when you have it in challenges. And so again, 8s are high frequency. So it's a little bit painful for people with a lot of 8s in their chart to even 1 8 in a chart, and Walt has it as well. They have to work at being here in the 3D world. It requires constant work because it's such a dense energy that being here on Earth is. The great thing about the 8 is that it does ground you here. This number is not easy for Annette. This is why she really wanted to stay home with her children, not just because of that hidden self of the 7, but because she's all about relating and nurturing. This is that protective, maternal, nurturing, relating energy. And it's not as valued in our culture where it's very corporate dominated, money, power. That's not the 8. The 8s are loving and soft and connecting to others. And so that was why she always struggled being out in the limelight. And like doing TV wasn't as bad, but being out at events and stuff would be very difficult for her. This is something she always have to work at. And it was one of the reasons she got divorced. Her first husband was a talent agent. And so his job is all of that entertaining and putting on that brave face and being out there in public. And she didn't want that. See what I mean? You marry somebody because it makes sense on paper, but at a deep soul level, it doesn't really make sense. And a lot of those relations come to pass because we're meant to learn that lesson that, better choices when it comes to our partners, so that you're also taking care of yourself. And so again, this helped her to also break out of those beliefs that marriage is forever and letting go with that 11-2, learning about that cycle, the life to death cycle of relationships. 8s also need to learn how to feel into their body and get out of their heads. And her having a 5 would also be way too much up in the mental equity. And in this lifetime, we're trying to get her in her heart. And when you can align your heart and your mind, that's the most powerful energy. And so that was really one of her big challenges here with having the challenge 7. This is that mentally thinking, I know what I'm feeling mentally. I must be feeling sad, but not really feeling it in the body. In her autobiography, the movie, they talked a little bit about, they had gone to a psychic, her parents. They had said she was going to have another son, but that he was going to be famous and be a singer, and that later on there was going to be an illness. And so this may have all been very predestined. And so we choose this kind of stuff. Everything is here to help us. We're not being punished. We don't judge people. You're sick. You must have done something wrong. Every physical manifestation has an emotional component. I do believe in that. And it's meant for us to just go deeper. It's an opportunity for growth. It is never a punishment. So these are things that we could have chosen in our contract before we came. And so one of the things that Annette, with being a dominant 8, was to really look at relationships. What is a healthy relationship? Because they get in their heads, and there's this fairy tale component. She worked at Disney. What were some of the first movies were this idea promoted of this feminine needing rescuing from the masculine, and it can be very damaging and disempowering. She fell in love with Paul Anka. He wrote Puppy Love for her, about her. She wanted to marry him and have kids with him. And I don't know that she ever got over that because, again, eights have trouble and 11s have trouble with letting go of these emotional attachments. And I think she had it in her mind that was the perfect love, that somehow that got missed. They can have kind of this unrequited love model playing out for them, and they end up choosing future partners based more not on their heart, but like I said, on the mental aspect. So this is all by design. It was meant for her to start to feel into the body. We highly recommend people with eights in their chart to do a lot of body work, massage, yoga, things that get you conscious of your body and your body's needs and what your body is trying to tell you. So that was something that Annette was here to work on. She had these sevens also along her current name. So that would bring in more of her trying to open up the heart. It's also about taking action and making good decisions. And so that would help her with objectiveness, not being overly emotional, but again, at a deep level, trying to get Annette to connect. I think she did a really good job connecting with her audience, because when people are drawn to you like that, it's because you are opening your heart. And that's the beauty of these aids for her, was that she was able to do that at a very emotional level. Having sevens in her spiritual drives or her spiritual goals, that's where Annette was meant to come into the world to catalyze people into action for a greater cause. So we talked about Annette manifesting MS. Initially, she tried to hide that for 5 years. What do we got here? This 5, right? That is not good for her. That would have been very difficult and would not have been in alignment with her soul, because she's all about speaking the truth. That's that karmic 7 trying to keep what's really going on hidden. So she had to work with the energies of the 5s, the 19-1. What kind of helped her, though, even though the negative part of the 19-1 can be worried about what society is going to think, but when she found out that people were viewing her as having a drug and alcohol problem because of her unsteadiness with the MS, that was a problem for her, because again, that was attacking her image that she had so carefully constructed her whole life, this moral, pure image. There's a little bit of a weird dynamic there, but that pushed her to come out and disclose that she had this disease. It ended up just the outpouring. She thought people would really look down on her and would really judge her harshly. And that was not the case. She didn't understand how she would be helping people. And again, that's the purpose of having 7s in your spiritual goals, is finding some way to bring people together to help them and to support a greater cause. And of course, she opened the Annette Funicello Fund for neurological disorders to assist in research and learning more about these diseases. Again, we have emotional components to diseases and physical components. So I'm not saying that we can do everything through the spiritual side. We have created medicine for a reason. And so it's always working with both components equally, with working on your trauma. Everybody has had trauma, even from past lives, that they could be bringing forward, whether it's DNA inheritance programming, things that we all need to release. And even Annette, although from the outside it appears she had this very charmed life, she had trauma. There's things there that would have been very beneficial and very helpful to her to deal with. And it's a time where that wasn't really talked about, the connection with the body mind. These are new times, and that's why she wants to bring this up. There's new exciting things happening. She wants me to bring up Joe Dispenza's book, You Are the Placebo, about how, she never went and got a second opinion. She just believed whatever. This is that codependency coming in. We believe whatever an authority figure tells us to be true. And our belief system is very powerful. And they told her she wasn't going to be able to walk and she was going to fail. And so you take those beliefs on, where now we're finding out that's not the case, right? And so we have to look at the person as a whole. And so she's just coming through to say, do that for yourself. These are all challenges that we chose, and everybody goes through them at certain levels, and it's not a punishment. None of these charts are easy. I haven't found one, I don't care who it was, that I've done. Some people think that there are people who live charmed lives, and I think some of us pick harder lifetimes. Obviously, we pick harder numbers at times and maybe easier numbers at times. And, probably because we need a break after many lifetimes of trying to break certain patterns. And that's okay. That's why some people have what we think are charmed life. This 20-2, I did want to mention this in her current name. This is where her dancing movement came from. It's all about movement and flow, but this also is about flexibility and adaptability. And we talked about that 16-7, her coming into being more adaptable, and how, again, what was really breaking her, this MS really breaking her out of this persona that she created, right? Where she always looked perfect and beautiful. She was helping people by going out and showing them her real self. So trust me, you will find a way to break out of some of these patterns, even if it seems very tragic. Okay, so this was a way for her to really come out and help others, catalyze those people together to bring a more united front. This 20-2 was trying to get her to explore new spiritual ideas and philosophies, even though you're going to be initially steeped in one religion. It's really meant for you to look at others as well, to see maybe a bigger picture, because we're all here to see the bigger picture, to let go of some of the things that don't serve us and to bring in some new energy. That was something she said she hadn't really done much. People, though, were trying through their letters to get her to look at like home remedies and different things to try to open up her belief system of, well, only the doctor knows what's best for me. Trying to get us out of this mode that only this is good for me, when we're all so different and different approaches can help different people in different ways. The 11-2 in her life purpose was Annette creating, as we talked about, her own structure, her own body of work through her movies, her singing, and her illness, something she could share and express. And that illness was really her being able to see things from a whole new perspective, having gone through such a serious illness that eventually took her life. So this really correlated very nicely with, you can see Walt's in his current name, he has that same kind of similar life purpose about, it's not in his birth certificate name. This was more about, remember we talked about her spiritual drives. He was about bringing people together, uniting them for a cause, or through his, you think of some of the great movies that caused a lot of emotion, like Bambi is one. I mean, that's through the heart. He was to live through the heart. He was a dominant 9, so he was about learning about his power and using it with great integrity. But in his current name, on the icing on that was also to build this business and this structure and knowledge based on his body of work, and he did a really good job here of that. You can see some other similarities here with the 15-6. Now, when I see a 15-6 in Annette's, in her current name, this brought in a level of 15-6 can be tied into having a lot of obstacles to overcome, because it's a kind of a preparatory energy. It's preparing her for something in her next incarnation on a spiritual level. So that's very interesting. In this lifetime, She was on a more gentle spiritual journey, trying to get a handle on what is spirituality and for her, but in a soft way in this lifetime. She didn't, like I said, go too deep on it, and that was probably by design. Walt had this as well in his spiritual qualities. He had a lot of obstacles that he had to overcome, and none of that came easy to him. It took him quite a while to build that business and for it to become successful as it was. He had great numbers here. Fours are all about business success. Sixes are about business success. He's got powerful nines in his talents here on the physical side, which really helped, along with this great grounding energy and his expression in society. This 21-3 creates some hardship though, and it was about him really coming into the mothering, nurturing, which kind of is a representation of Walt Disney. If you think of how as a family we watched that Walt Disney was like this loving, mothering energy watching those shows on TV, and it brought us together. So that's what we're talking about, bringing people together and uniting them through the heart. That was part of his purpose here. And you can see he's got this in line with, they connected at a very deep soul level. They have a lot of the similar numbers, and having the sevens in their spiritual talents, qualities would have really definitely aligned them together. And then him being this very masculine energy, she would be very drawn as that feminine to the masculine, because we're meant to come into balance, the masculine and the feminine, but sometimes we can be drawn to somebody who is either more in their masculine or feminine, depending maybe what we're lacking, because we're trying to balance that out all the time. So that could be another reason that they were so well connected. She was a beautiful person, and she exuded a lot of beautiful Venus energy, eights, that nurturing, protective energy. I think she's a beautiful person. I think she showed us what integrity looks like, as far as never demeaning other people verbally. She never used her speech for negative things, which is a very high ideal. She was able to really emotionally attach with people. She had very long-term friends. One of the Mouseketeers was her long-term friend, Shelley Fabre. She met, it was another actress, and they were lifelong friends. And so that's that beautiful energy of hers, where she can maintain these beautiful relationships with people. So I'm going to stop sharing the screen now, and we're going to pull some oracle cards. And so the first ones, and so we'll see who they're from as we hold them. We'll see what energy comes through. I'm getting the elemental oracle first. Now, when you're a dominant 8, that makes you very tied to the elements, wind, rain. It's very much part of earth, because it's the energy that binds you to earth. And so this number, or this comes up, and this is very much from Annette. This is number 25, the 2 and the 5, which were in her charts. 2 is about that emotional resiliency. 5, again, and it's called voice, speaking your word, and how important that is. 5, and so the 2 and the 5 add up to the 7 again, which opens up the heart energy and gets you to take appropriate action. So she's conveying, I'm going to go to the book here. So she wants us to know, this is very important to her. Use your words, your voice to speak up. Sing your song out to the universe. It's often not what you say, but how you say it. Speak plainly and tell your story. So the voice is an air-powered instrument, the sound of which is made by the movement of pressurized air over the vocal cords. The vocal cords vibrate, making audible pulses that are adjusted by the muscles of the larynx to give a unique variety in pitch and tone. The sound is further filtered by the lips, cheeks, and facial muscles, as well as the position of the neck and chest. Every person's voice is quite unique because of the combination of their physiological, state, although we do like to mimic others for fun, or people who impersonations, right? They're really good at it. The human voice is capable of a huge variety of sounds, from harmonic tonality to grunts, squeals, and screams. The voice is one way humans express and create emotion in themselves and others, and of course, communication through complex language. Listening to amazing voices raised up in song is something humanity has been doing since prehistory. Yet perhaps more importantly, being able to speak out about what is important to us is even more vital. You must use your voice both kindly and for greater good. Not being afraid to speak out about injustice or to change a bad law or system has always changed the world for better. What a great message from her to encourage us to use our voices respectfully, but to create change for good, helping others. She was on the Libra Scorpio cusp, so she would have this justice and transformation energy about her. So the next energy I'm going to is the archetype cards. And so this is about that light and dark energy. So what we have here is the beggar energy. So what is the beggar energy? And we all have these archetypes that play out for us. So the light attribute of the beggar confronts empowerment at the level of physical survival, awakens a spiritual authority of humility, compassion, and self-esteem. That's your empowerment side, doing for yourself and supporting yourself. The shadow attribute is that dependence on others to the exclusion of effort. So again, allowing others to do with you so that you don't have to do it. That's not, again, that was something she struggled with, and she wants to bring that to our attention. The next deck I'm being drawn to is the Sacred Destiny Oracle. And adventures come up. So this is about, she had the 16-7, and they can struggle a little bit with adventure. And so this is her encouraging us, encouraging you to be more adventurous. You can see here there's the birds. So we've got the flock of birds, the waterfall, all of that symbolism, the birds with the voice, and just taking adventures to renew your energy, having fun. Again, that 19-1 coming through, where one of the fairy oracle, I really felt her energy with this deck. It was really. And we have look in a book. So here's a message for some people. Whatever your question right now, you'll find the answer in a book. The words you find will bring the insight you seek. So, that's about acquiring more knowledge. And again, she was a little bit reluctant at times to go outside of her own belief system. And she's encouraging, that's what looking in a book, looking for different answers, looking for different ideas. Sometimes, again, we have a lot of inner knowledge that we can access, but sometimes we just need a book to help us to remember what we already know. So she's encouraging that at this time to seek out more knowledge. So the next card, I'm getting the angel guide, because I know she was Catholic and she was very much tied to the angels. And this is a wonderful message coming through, how important compassion is. And that 19-1 was helping to bring out that compassionate side. 8s are very tied to compassion as well, as they're grounded in their emotions, and how important it is for us And you can see the heart, compassion is tied to the heart energy, which is actually a green energy. There's some pink and green. Pink is love. Green signifies the heart chakra. And how she's holding her hands out, because it's very important to have compassion, but what she's saying is to be able to, having compassion for yourself as well, but to be able to understand the difference between pity and compassion, and how important that pity can be a very destructive energy because it keeps people very disempowered and very much in the victim. But compassion is understanding where somebody is, holding somebody where they are at, and understanding that's part of the journey. True compassion is very, very powerful. And that was a lot of her sevens were driving that energy. So I didn't mention this earlier, but her eights are also very tied to the animal. I'm getting hitting on something here because I had forgotten that. She had a horse. So that's where she ended up meeting her second husband was a horse trainer. And horses are tied to the energy of freedom, boundaries, building those fences, not letting people cross your boundaries. And of course, people with eights, they connect better to animals. I should say they relate better to animals than they do to people. And so the horses are tied to the number 5, which is about learning to ground yourself. And again, I said freedom, boundaries are really important. And then what we pulled from the animal spirit deck is the panther energy, number 44, which adds up to 8. This energy is about reclaiming you're a powerful being. This is tied though to the third eye and understanding what the third eye is and how powerful it is and how we can connect to that energy. And so she's inviting you to learn more about that type of energy as well. She had quite a few decks she had me pull for this reading. See what this, then we're going to get a final mantra here, a healing mantra from the Matt Kahn deck. What came out is the Eagle King. And this is the number 12. She didn't have a 12 in her chart, but it's tied to expansion. And so 12 was the age where she first got her first big break. And this is about the big picture and asking for angelic help. She wants to know that connecting with your guides and angels, we all have protectors, we have family who crossed over to the other side that are supporting us, and really focusing on the big picture, but while staying present. We can plan for the future, but remain in the present moment because that's all we have. If we live too much in the past, that can cause a lot of depression. We get too far ahead and worry about the future, it causes a lot of anxiety. And that just is our body's way of telling us we're not where we need to be. We're out of balance. We need to be in the present moment and we need to let go of that. So again, that was interesting, the Eagle King. And there's a hawk there. That's all about keeping your vision, holding tight to what it is that you want to accomplish. And so the last card we're going to pull, I haven't done one in the reading in a while, a healing, because she ended up passing from a illness. I'm going to pull. His energy has been tough. And I do want to say thank you to the person who suggested her. I really enjoyed learning more about Annette and getting to know her at a deep level. It was a lot of fun. She has a wonderful, beautiful energy. And so this is again about that, the power of gratitude. So allowing appreciation. And so I'm going to read to you what this does for you. So, when appreciation is allowed, everything is seen as a gift for the evolution of your soul. The more often you appreciate, the greater value you feel within your own life. While there is true worth in uncovering your life's purpose, most feelings of discontent are not caused by what you do or don't do. They are created simply by a lack of perceived value in your environment. Instead of waiting for things to get better before you allow appreciation, you must be willing to acknowledge the value in all things. This will awaken the feelings of elation that are always alive within you. You don't need an outside external event to make that happen. This mantra is ideal for increasing worthiness, decreasing feelings of scarcity, and raising your vibration. So the mantra is, please repeat after me. We're going to say this 3 times. The value of my life increases each time I appreciate everything in it. The value of my life increases each time I appreciate everything in it. The value of my life increases each time I appreciate everything in it. Well, thank you to Annette and to Walt as well for allowing me to bring through their charts. If you have any questions on anything I didn't answer, please feel free to comment below and I'll try to answer those for you if I didn't hit upon something that you wanted me to. Thank you for being here. I'm very, very appreciative of that and of being able to do these videos. It's a lot of fun for me to share the soul contract with all of you. I really appreciate it and I will see you in the next video. Thank you.